You are listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan, a show that brings reckoning to today's culture and the impact on the body of the church. No topic is off the table on the quest to take back our churches. Join Jason and Aaron and swim against the current of the modern culture.
Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host, Aaron Lujan.
Good morning, sir.
We have a fun show planned for you today.
I'm ready.
We're going to start with an interview with the one, the only Jim Miller,
Yes.
candidate for City Council District 5 in Colorado Springs. And then we're going to talk about the state of media, which I think is going to be a very fun topic for us to cover.
And I also want to get into some financial news as well.
Ooh, I don't know about this one. This one's going to be new for me as it comes in from Aaron.
It's from Moody's. RT's reporting on it. A lot of rumor about recession fears, but we'll get into that later in the show.
Well, we're bound to have a recession at some point, but let's wait for that conversation. But first, we have Jim Miller on the line. Jim, are you with us?
I am. Yes, I am. I'm right here.
All right. Jim is running for City Council in Colorado Springs, District 5. You can find information on his website, jimmillerforcolorado.com. And, you know, I know that this show reaches pretty much the entire state of Colorado, but there's still something that's very... What's the right word? Whatever we talk about really impacts every single community in Colorado, and even broader than that. I mean, these are issues that every city councilor are facing. And so, Jim, you know, you have a very interesting story. I know you've been on this show before, but tell us again, like, what is the story? Why are you running?
So I started getting into politics because next to our house, 4 convicted felon pedophiles moved in. We live next to a church. And for further context, my daughter's a survivor of it, and this kind of stuff shouldn't be around churches, schools, daycares, trails, parks. You know, for an era of speaking on, you know, mental health and safe spaces, nobody cared about the safe space, the mental health for my daughter, you know, kind of getting back to, I guess, you know, a more standard, you know, mental state, a position of living that was better. I went to, you know, everything in the city council. I went to mayors. I went to law enforcement. Nobody cared. Nobody even wanted to try to help or anything. And I got the good old go to the website, or, you know, we'll get back to you nonsense that we all get anytime we have any problems with anything. And,
circle back.
Yep. Basically, that's it all the time. And I made a shot for mayor. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of grabbed the baseball bat and swung as hard as I could and took big swings, and then didn't do as good with that, but made a very good reputation for being, you know, the kind of person I am, just a guy from the community, just straight shooter, honest, no polititalk, no executive speak, just something's wrong, it's wrong, something's right, it's right. And here I am doing it, taking another swing at the city council position.
Now, the state of Colorado does not have a law restricting where a convicted pedophile can live in relation to schools, etc. But the cities have the ability to put in place ordinances that restrict where these individuals can reside. And yet most of the cities in in Colorado have not taken any action to dictate where these sex offenders can live in relation to parks and schools, you know, so on and so forth. Why do you think that the Colorado Springs City Council has failed to further restrict or restrict at all where these individuals can live?
So I think there's a number of reasons, but I think a big reason is that, let's be straight, local politics is a real bought and paid for avenue for special interest, especially excessive developers and things of that nature. They get focused on obscure things that become trendy or popular. They kind of, I think they knee bend, limp wrist, bench run stuff just way too much and just do whoever funded their campaign. And I think they just focus on those interests and don't actually care about safety. They just use safety as a slogan, or even to mitigate things that could be, you know, preventable. I think they just skirt tell it, to be very frank with you.
Well, the other issue that we see in these municipal races is the fact that they're nonpartisan, and there's no R's and D's next to names. And what we've tended to see is even in stronghold conservative Republican communities, the municipal races and city council end up tending to shift more liberal and more left because we're just not driving the Republican vote. And so for a long time, even somewhere like Colorado Springs, where almost all of the elected politicians are Republican, our city council and actually our mayor position right now are very, very, very far left for a long time, even though county commissioners are right. Every other representative is on the conservative side. And so this is a really good reminder as plenty of municipalities throughout Colorado are running their elections right now for their city council race. I think there's even some mayoral races going on around the state. This is an important reminder that you all listening to this show right now, you need to vote in every single election. I don't care if there's one issue on a ballot. I don't care if it's one race. I don't care what it is. You get a ballot in the mail. You need to return it. You need to vote because it makes such a huge impact. And if you're listening to this show, you know how important this is in securing our freedoms, our freedom to assemble, our freedom of speech, our Second Amendment rights. It is really important that we vote in every single election. Jim, what we're seeing, though, in Colorado Springs outside of just this issue, which I think this pedophile issue is a huge issue around the state because very few municipalities have done anything about it. But there are plenty of other issues at hand that have kind of just been disregarded. What are kind of the large-scale issues that you're looking to attack?
So the budget has become a pretty bad thing. It's just out of control, rubber stamped, never balanced, never done right. Nobody ever looks at it. So that's a big part because that's funded by the taxpayers. That's funded by the constituents. You know, they pay for this stuff, and it's just wasted and thrown everywhere, and they're always asked for more, stuck with the bill, and get nothing in return. So that's a big issue. Safety is always an issue, but there's not a lot on city council you can do with it except for some laws, some rules, some litigation, things of that nature. The utility board's position is also part of this being elected for city council. You become a board member on utilities. And utilities here has these access fees of $100 and $200 right around there every month before you even turn the light on, turn the water on, flush the toilet, anything. Which has gotten ridiculous and just made utilities just extremely expensive while they, at the same time, brag about having, we have the lowest rates. And, I think the last time was like 3 or 4 months ago. It was like, we have the lowest rates in the country. And you're like, but you're charging $100, $200 before the rate or any usage is even charged. Another thing is access to these representatives. I mean, if you have a complaint, a problem, an issue, you can't talk to city council but Tuesday at 11. Most people are at work, right? Let's be straight about it. That's insane. I'm moving for more of a sense of community kind of aspect where we could do at least no less than once a month. Let's have Sunday after church and hours at the park right off Pikes Peak, right? Let's just have it at the park. Bring a problem, bring a solution, bring an appetite, grab a burger, grab a wiener off the grill, grab a soda. Let's be a community and let's find some solutions and make it better.
Well, it's definitely an interesting concept. I know that I grew up in Anaheim, California, and whoop, whoop. I don't know
what that was for.
I don't want to celebrate Anaheim.
I'm a Southern California guy. So
you started celebrating Anaheim, and I was like, I'll celebrate with it. I'm like, no, I don't want to celebrate Southern California. What the heck?
You're like,
what are we doing on this show? But Anaheim, when I was growing up, I don't know if they still do, but they had all of their city council meetings at 6 p.m. I know because I attended them as, in different groups that I was a part of growing up. The Boy Scouts attended. I don't even want to promote the Boy Scouts anymore, but the Boy Scouts, one of the things was you had to attend a city meeting, and we attended a city meeting at 6 o'clock at night.
The androgynous Scouts.
Right. Who knows what it is now or what it's about to become. But, here in Colorado Springs, and not only do we have this issue that it's at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, but it actually is at the same time as a county commissioner meeting. And so you have to decide which problem is bigger if you want to address multiple problems in the city.
If you do decide to pick one, you have to pick one. And this is a commonplace thing going on, especially in Colorado as a whole. They schedule or price the regular people out from doing anything. That's why people don't vote. That's why people don't get involved with politics. They're frustrated. They're irritated. They're mad. Most people seem pretty happy chit-chatting and talking with me because I'm like, no, I don't like politicians or politics either. I just want it to be a good community. I just want it to be a nice place.
Yeah, I think I was talking to somebody the other day about you, Jim, and they go, well, there's just something different. I said, well, here's the thing, right? Like, everybody gets up on stage and goes, I'm not a politician, but at the end of the day, they look like a politician, they dress like a politician, they talk like a politician. And Jim, you're
probably
different.
is a politician.
I said this, right? Like, I'm like, hey, listen, when I was running, I went in front of caucus and I was like, look, everybody's going to get up here and be like, I'm not a politician. I go, but the minute you sign up to run for an elected position, you're a politician. But Jim, you've maintained your just a guy status of you're definitely not a politician. And it's not a bad thing at all. And I think that we're seeing this. If you look at who's returning ballots in your race, these are people that have never voted before in a municipal election. And that is huge. Like, you are driving out people throughout the city that have never voted in a municipal race. Some of them have never voted at all in their lifetime, and you're driving them out to the polls because I think they truly believe what you're doing. And so I thank you for setting yourselves apart from the rest of the swamp that is looking to gain these elected positions and just give some special interest group or developer an upper hand.
Yeah, I tell everybody, I just want to be a representative. Whether I agree or not, the will of the people is supposed to be met. And we're all tired of it, honestly. We're sick and tired of the same old stuff with a different face. We get another turd in the suit, another turd who does this. We're like, we're good. Same old stuff, different face. We're over it. I think we're just fed up with it at this point.
Well, Jim, we thank you so much for running. Aaron, you got any final questions for Jim?
Yeah, Jim, what would you say to last-minute voters who are just undecided at this point? What is your last plea to these folks?
Hey, get out and vote. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to participate. They don't want you to do it. Do it. Look at the campaign financial sheet, see who's bought and paid for by what. It's always a pretty good indicator with things. That lets you know everybody that's donated to me is just people, local people, and every donation, they're expecting a return, right?
District 5, Colorado Springs, vote for Jim Miller.
Yes, sir.
100%. Find out more information. You can donate to his campaign online at jimmillerforcolorado.com. It does not matter if you live in Colorado Springs. If you like what Jim represents, go online, give them $10. I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. And even things that happen in small municipalities tend to have further consequences outside of just that municipality. We've seen it plenty of times throughout the state of Colorado, especially when you're talking about the big cities like Colorado Springs, Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins.
Yes.
The decisions that they make in their municipalities oftentimes get a lot of press. It forces the hand of other jurisdictions. I can only imagine what happens when Jim is able to push through a measure, an ordinance that restricts where pedophiles can live. There's going to be a lot of pressure that's placed on other municipalities around the state to do the same thing, because Colorado Springs is being looked at all the time on the broader stage in Colorado. And so it does not matter if you live in Colorado Springs. I mean, show your support for Jim. I'm 100% behind Jim. I've endorsed Jim, and we are so glad that you are running and so grateful for it. Jim, thank you for coming on this show. We appreciate you.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, no problem. We're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation, or start our conversation, on media and its trajectory in this country. Hang with us. Don't go anywhere.
Full Armor Sports Teams has a new facility for after-school youth programs. It's located at 2380 Montebello near North Academy and Union, with 2 pools for swim lessons and swim teams, a weight room for powerlifting, conditioning, and more. Full Armor Sports Teams is a Christ-centered and family-oriented organization bringing the youth of Colorado Springs together. For more info on after-school and homeschool programs, go to fullarmorsportsteams.com or call 719-629-SWIM.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host, Aaron Lujan.
Alhamdulillah.
And we just had Jim Miller on the show. Find him, jimmillerforcolorado.com. Candidate running for Colorado Springs City Council District 5. We promised you a discussion on media. We promised you a discussion on finance. But I think we need to talk about this really quickly first. Trump's executive order requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections in the United States. This is an opinion piece on MSNBC from Richard Hansen, professor at UCLA School of Law. Trump's executive order on elections is a blatant power grab. Goes on to say, here we go, I'm going to scroll down here. Requiring documentary proof of citizenship to be allowed to register to vote is currently under debate both in Congress and in the states. Arizona has such rules, though they are tied up in litigation. Whether a documentary requirement is a good idea, and I think it's a bad idea because it could disenfranchise millions of eligible voters and prevent only a tiny amount of fraud, the issue is up to the states and Congress, not to the president. It's dangerous to put such power in the hands of the president, who could attempt to manipulate election rules to favor his party and his self-interest, and it seems especially dangerous to take power away from the states when there are many threats to our democracy, end quote. Like, this is... Here's the story. In every country around the world, you have to be a citizen to vote in their elections.
You mean I can't vote in Zimbabwe?
You cannot vote in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And in many countries, if you are not a citizen and try to vote, you will be thrown in jail for years.
It's a jailable offense to vote as a non-citizen in most countries or many countries?
Almost every country.
Okay. But in our country, it's controversial to suggest that we should make this a law?
Correct.
Okay.
So what's going on is basically this UCLA professor, his big argument is that this is a states' rights issue because states are supposed to run elections. But when the states know that they have an issue and have chosen not to do anything about it for decades now, it's about time that something happens and they go, no, you can no longer allow this to happen. Well, one of the big issues, I'll tell you this, one of the big issues with the way that we draw lines in Colorado in terms of assigning representation for the state is based on the census. Well, it's based on a count regardless of citizenship. So in other words, the cities that have more illegal aliens living in their city or more immigrants living in their city that don't have citizenship, it skews where the lines are drawn. And therefore, there's more representation in cities, even though there's not as many citizens as in others. So there's an argument to be had that maybe there's actually probably 2 or 3 more seats in other parts of Colorado than in, like, Denver. Because if you were only counting representation based on citizenship and not the census of the whole of who's living in the United States, you would draw the lines completely different.
We don't have equal weights and measures as it pertains to voting.
No. And so here we have the Dems that are fighting this. And here's the funny, ironic statement going back to this article. I think it's a bad idea because it could disenfranchise millions of eligible voters and prevent only a tiny amount of fraud. The issue is up to the states and Congress, not the president. It's dangerous to put such power in the hand of the president, who could attempt to manipulate election rules to favor his party and his self-interest. I mean, like...
Shooting yourself in the foot. It's like, and call me leftist Lisa, but it seems to me like he started off really good because, as you've known and the listeners of our show know, I have an issue with executive orders, whether it's the red hat or the blue hat guy. But so when he started off by saying this is a state's issue, I started to get kind of warm and fuzzies. Like, okay, well, that's a fair legal argument. We are a nation that is the United States, where the power rests within the states. They should be concentrated at a more local level than at a macro federal level. So he started off good and started to endear me, but then, of course, shoots himself in the foot by saying it'll disenfranchise voters, as if we're essentially stating that illegal aliens have the right to vote, which is asinine.
So in general, and this is a general statement, in general, a lower level government can provide rules that are more strict than the upper level government, but not completely disobey those laws. So, for instance, a state can have a stricter take on the abortion issue, but not a lesser stake in the abortion issue. So, for instance, if the federal government were to put in place a 15-week abortion ban, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon, if they were to put in a 15-week abortion ban, states could still decide they're not going to allow abortions at all, but no state could say, no, we're going to allow it up to 30 weeks. And so something like this, the federal law is you have to be a citizen to vote. So a state cannot say, we're going to ignore that law. Now a state can go, we're going to now require proof of citizenship to allow them to vote, but they can't be lesser than the federal law. And a city can make additional rules that do not conflict with the state's rules, that can be harsher than the state's rules, but not lesser than the state's rules.
So if the states were to disobey federal law, what are the repercussions for state governments?
Well, I think that's what we're seeing right now is I think the federal government is saying if the states aren't going to do this, if the states aren't going to ensure that the only people voting in our elections are citizens, we're going to force their hand. And by and large, both you and I, for the most part, would probably agree that we don't err on the side of thinking that's a good idea for the federal government to take power over states. But in situations like this, when we have states that are just blatantly ignoring the law of the land, I don't think that there's a problem with the federal government going, look, this is not a huge request. This is one executive order that's like, this is not an unreasonable request.
And just to push back, that arguably creates a precedent, a slippery slope, if you will, where we can just, if we don't like something, the pendulum can swing the other way, Jason.
I understand that the pendulum can swing the other way, but this is not a federal law, or this is not an executive order that is putting in place a new law.
Fair.
This is an executive order that's saying you need to follow the law.
It's the repercussion that I asked about earlier. If you're not going to follow the law of the land, then there's going to be consequences. And your assessment is this is the most reasonable course of action the federal government could take?
I think that when you look at executive orders, okay, even Trump's executive orders, there are a lot of executive orders that are, by and large, creating law, which is wrong, right? Executive orders, even though they have the force of law, which I don't think that they should.
We don't legislate from the executive branch.
We don't think that we should legislate from the executive branch. We're both on the same page. We're both against it. And so there's plenty of executive orders that Trump has done, that Obama's done, that every president has done that created law. I totally disagree with that. Go through Congress. But when an executive order puts in place guidelines in terms of you need to follow the current federal law, I don't have a problem with that executive order.
So now that this is an executive order that's been issued by Trump, what is the expected response from state governments at this point?
This is already being fought. It'll end up on the Supreme Court. I mean, this is the beginning of a story that launched. Today's Thursday, even though you're hearing this show on Saturday, that launched on Wednesday, just about 24 hours ago from where we are right now. And so this is definitely going to be fought for a long time through the courts, maybe expedited. I believe that we're going to have some sort of decision from the courts before the next election cycle, the next major election cycle in 2 years, but we may not.
And is this being argued from, I guess, the intellectual left that this quote-unquote disenfranchises voters, referring to illegal aliens? Is that literally what they're leading with?
It's a very interesting way to put it, that this disenfranchises voters, because I don't know how you can disenfranchise a citizen from voting. Yes, there may be an additional step, which is probably what they're arguing, right? Yes, you need to have proof. And so, if you don't have a federal ID or an ID that's accepted federally, if you don't have your birth certificate, yes, you might have to go through an additional step in order to cast a ballot. But if you care enough to choose your representation in this country, you do what it takes to be able to cast your ballot and cast your vote.
I've just never understood why everyone accepts this fact that you have to provide identification to buy lottery tickets, but not to vote in a federal election.
Oh, now, I mean, even tobacco now, like you have to all these tobacco stores are scanning your ID before you can even make a purchase.
So the technology exists to scan identification cards to verify age for purchase.
Yes.
Why can't that just be parlayed into an election?
It easily could. Part of the problem, the other part of the problem is that we have ballots just being sent out in Colorado to anybody that has a breath.
Well, maybe we should stop sending out ballots in the mail and you come in like a real man.
Well, that's going to be that. See, that's
say it to my face.
Now you get into a lot of states' rights issues, right? Because this has been debated ever since some of these states went to a strict mail-in ballot only or mail-in ballot heavy situation, which has been challenged plenty of times. The federal government could, I guess, in term, the legislature could say, you know what, we're done with this mail-in ballot stuff. I'd love if that happened. I don't foresee it happening.
It seems like a cesspool of corruption.
100% is. And the thing about it is there's further down the line consequences in all these decision making. Right now, what's really interesting is both parties probably don't want to get away from early voting. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because you can weed out the people that have already casted a ballot. And so you can go after just those. You can ballot chase, which if you had a single day election, you can't ballot chase. Well, if you can't ballot chase, now you gotta shoot more of a shotgun style approach where you're hitting everybody instead of a more targeted approach where you're just targeting the people that haven't returned ballots, and you increase the cost and you decrease the effectiveness of your campaigning. So I could see that if we were to go back to a single day voting, I don't think that both parties would actually ever come to an agreement on that because they've seen the benefits of being able to ballot chase. So I think that we're probably never going to go back to a single day election, even though that's what's being campaigned upon by so many politicians. I would love a single day election. Don't get me wrong. I just don't. I'm gonna bring it down to brass tacks. I don't think it'll happen.
No, it's always the classical will of the powerful and the political class versus the people.
Yeah, it's a way of going, listen, we can make sure, we can ensure that we have the ability to decrease our costs, increase our effectiveness with technology and ballot chasing, because now I can target the IP addresses of the voters that haven't returned a ballot. And if you think that I'm full of nonsense, I can promise you as a political strategist, this is what we do in our campaigns. You haven't returned a ballot, you're still going to receive text messages, you're going to receive IP-targeted ads until you turn in that ballot.
When are we going to introduce blockchain technology to the voting process? Because I feel like that would be a fascinating innovation. And the reason I say this, Jason, is the crux of blockchain is that it's transparent. It's also completely trackable and traceable, and it can perfectly parlay into the technology that's already scanning IDs. I think that a technological reformation of the voting process would be a huge benefit to society. Would you not agree?
Part of it is that you can never put personal identification to a ballot, which I think is part of the struggle with some of this stuff. Is that you can't know how somebody voted. Like
you can assign an anonymous coin to an individual, and say there's people represented by these, like, call them tokens, and it's completely anonymous, but there's a certain number of people in voting in the election, and we can back it up. But I just think it's an interesting conversation.
It's definitely an interesting conversation. I think that any form of voting that you have, regardless of what it is, I think that every form has its downfalls, has its upsides, and every form of voting has an element of being able to be rigged or be exploited, or issues being exploited, or voter fraud. I think that voter fraud will always exist in some way, shape, or form. I think that voter fraud is heavily underestimated by the left. And I think it has a much larger play. But at the same time, you can say, look, like, even if voter fraud didn't exist, let's talk about how our elections are being skewed by special interest groups and being bought and paid for. So that, the pharmaceutical company, the housing industry, the farming industry, the subsidies that take place, all of that is protected because they paid for an election.
Well, if anyone has watched Dinesh D'Souza's 2000 Mules documentary, everyone's at this point convinced how corrupt it is, right?
It's super corrupt. I mean, go back, read Freakonomics. It's been a long time since I've read Freakonomics. I need to buy the book again. I was just thinking about that the other day, but they talk about some of this stuff too.
Yeah.
Right, the economics of elections. And, having candidates like Jim Miller and some of these other candidates like Ken DeGraff, Scott Bottoms, Stephanie Luck, those are all individuals that truly are not bought by special interest groups. And throughout their serving, Jim Miller has not been elected, but the other three, throughout their entire tenure as politicians, quote unquote, you can see by their voting record and by their actions and by their rhetoric that they have not taken any money from special interest groups, and it's clear as day. We need more of that in this state. We need more of that in this country, on the federal level, on the state level, and the municipalities, because these municipalities, those races are bought and paid for too. I mean, millions of dollars. I think that last mayoral race in Colorado Springs, something like $11 million was spent on that race for a mayor candidate.
Yeah, the battle between good and evil rests in the political battles. It's always been a matter of the will of the people versus politics and power. Anytime you have, especially in these federal elections, billions of dollars that are at play, and you have power that's shifting and being contested for, you're going to have corruption. And it's the very reason why we should be safeguarding elections at all costs. It's the same reason why, it's the same logic that we apply to free speech. The most controversial, the most unauthorized form of speech is the speech that you want to protect. It's the reason why free speech exists. It doesn't exist because I'm a UCLA Bruins fan and I get to be able to say that. It exists because I want to say things like, I think Israel's committing acts of genocide. Things that can get you fired for, things that could get you excommunicated from society for. So the same reason we need to safeguard the free speech is the same reason why we safeguard elections. It's exactly where the corruption takes place.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to have a conversation on media in America.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hang with us. Don't go anywhere.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams. Learn more at fullarmorsportsteams.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Howdy.
We just had a fun conversation on voting.
Yeah.
And on Trump's executive order when it comes to requiring documentation or proof of citizenship at the ballot box.
Funsies.
It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. But we had promised a conversation to our listeners on the state of media across America. This is super interesting. I think it says a lot about what we're trying to do here at Spiritual Insurgency. I'm going to hand it over to Aaron. He's going to read this statement, and we'll go on from there.
I was on the Instagrams, and I follow Ian Smith Sr. at Ian Smith Fitness. You guys may know him as the super buff, incredibly bearded young man that stood his ground in New Jersey during the COVID lockdowns when Governor Murphy, I believe, said, if you open your gym, you're in big trouble. And he stood his ground and became a conservative rock star. Fox News couldn't get enough of him, and then he started saying things off script, and he has been abandoned by media, mainstream media, and he's notating, I think, a shift in the media landscape that's occurred and evolved starting in 2016. And I want to take us down memory lane, because back in 2016, when Trump was running for the first time, there was this narrative of fake news. That was the first time in the cultural zeitgeist that we as a people, culturally in the mainstream, started questioning whether or not the corporate media institutions were telling us the truth. Now, of course, our listeners, those of you who are listening, have always known that this has been an existential threat to our republic. But for the first time in 2016, this sort of became the narrative in the culture. And then shortly thereafter, there was this left versus right battle where the right were being censored. And there was this cultural acceptance of this narrative that the viewpoints of conservative people, the church, those who lean to the right politically, were being oppressed. And the reaction, the result of that, was this rise of new media. Ben Shapiro established the Daily Wire, and these outlets started to became very popular. Rumble became an emerging platform and ended up becoming a publicly traded stock, and I think had an IPO between that time and now. And so we've witnessed this rise in conservative media, alt-right content, whatever you want to call it. I just call it opposing viewpoints, those that oppose the corporate narrative. And so we've had this rise of these conservative media personalities. I think of people like DC Drano, who's really popular on X, millions of listeners, or Cat Turd on Twitter. And so there's these meme pages and there's these conservative media influencers that have risen to really high levels that have surpassed the numbers of corporate media of days past. And going back to Ian Smith, when he went on Instagram, he made a comment about this and made a really significant observation about how he believes that the new battle is no longer going to be between left and right, but it's going to be a civil war on the right, and that battle place, those battlegrounds are going to take place in media. And so I'm going to read to you what he said, and then Jason and I are going to talk about this, because I think it's important for the church to know what's evolving in the conservative media space, because these are exactly the places where the church gets its information from and makes decisions for the future of this nation and for their families. And Jesus says, do not be deceived. God takes no pleasure in an ignorant church. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. He says, the conservative movement is being bought through their influencers. Most have no idea who's pulling the strings or how this works, so let's break it down. This all works through companies like Influenceable. They are not the only one, just the biggest. Essentially, it is a marketing and influence operation backed by political consultants, wealthy donors, and in some cases, foreign-aligned interests. And what is their goal? To manufacture support for certain agendas by paying your favorite influencers to push them. They're handing out money, scripts, and bullet points to social media personalities, political influencers, trad life accounts, meme pages, and quote-unquote patriotic content creators. These influencers then flood your feed with what looks like organic content, but behind the scenes, it's a carefully coordinated campaign, no less scripted than the mainstream media they claim to fight against. They post polished videos acting like it's just quote-unquote common sense conservatism while parroting the same talking points. Defend sending billions in foreign aid. Attack Congressman Thomas Massie for opposing it. Defending junk food purchases under SNAP. Justify endless military spending abroad. This isn't honest discourse. This is weaponized marketing, sold as authenticity by some nerd without a real job yapping into his or her phone. Let's be honest. When did we as conservatives start supporting government welfare expansion and blank checks to foreign governments? We did it. But now some of the loudest voices in our space are getting paid to make it sound like we've always done this. This is paid influence designed to redefine what it means to be America first, to swap out real conservative values for neoconservative talking points and foreign priorities. This is psychological manipulation through TikTokers, podcasters, influencers, and meme accounts that many conservatives trust. They wave the flag that says, God bless America, and cash the check. Multiple influencers posting nearly identical videos within hours. Same phrasing, same targets, same fake outrage, same low-hanging fruit, and never diving into real issues. This is not a coincidence. It's a coordinated narrative warfare. And the people funding it, they're the same old swamp. Think tank insiders, mega donors, foreign lobbies, and the DC machine. Influenceable has been linked to major GOP operatives like Brad Parscale and has received funding through groups like Defend Texas Liberty, all while quietly pushing influencers to shape political opinion around issues like foreign aid and political loyalty. They don't need to censor us anymore. They just buy the people we listen to and let them do the dirty work. And you're supposed to think it's grassroots. You're supposed to believe that this is what conservatism is now, but it's not. It's controlled opposition in a MAGA hat. Lastly, the conservative movement is under attack from the inside. This isn't just about policy. It's about ownership of the narrative. And the people who want to own it don't care about you, your family, or this country's future. They care about power. They care about money. And they're using your trust as leverage. Stay sharp, pay attention, call out the grift on all sides. Because controlled opposition doesn't always come with a rainbow flag and a protest sign. Sometimes it looks like a clean-cut guy with a Bible in one hand and a camera in the other. But behind the camera is a paycheck and a script. Jason?
James 3, starting at verse 13. Here you go. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your heart, do not boast and lie against the truth. The wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. It's always mind-boggling. Like, this is the passage that 3 weeks ago we read in the Bible study for my swim team. And this is the Bible verse, or this is the passage that we studied last night in youth group at my church in Brave, Colorado Springs.
Come on.
And this is so relevant to what we're discussing right now.
100% spot on.
Because oftentimes we think of this battle between good and evil as like these large things, right? This being able and being in tune with the Holy Spirit to make the decision, like, no, I shouldn't have one more drink. No, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't drink and drive. No, I think I should probably skip out on the drugs today. Like, we think about it as these large battles and these large decision makings, but that's not the warning that we're receiving time and time again.
True.
This warning is that this deception that's going to take place, this spiritual battle that's taking place, is going to require a huge amount of tuning in to the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And looking at who is quote unquote leaders in the faith, leaders in our community, and really distinguishing whether or not the rhetoric that's coming out of their mouth is from God or whether it's self-serving. And nothing speaks of it better when you talk about the fact that we have rhetoric that's going on that is completely funded by special interests and by lobbies and parties and trying to create a narrative. Those are things that we need to be in tune with and go, you know what, like, maybe it's time that we not listen to those people or not take what they're saying for fact. And we're warned time and time again. Paul writes all the time, be wary of false teachers. Mm-hmm. Be wary of the false teaching that's going to take place. If you think that every pastor, because they're standing at a podium and preaching from the Bible, which many times they're not preaching from the Bible.
Right.
If you just blanketly go, you know what, I trust them in their dissemination of the word, we're doing something wrong. Right. Well, I think Ian just said something very interesting at the end, right? Like he talked about the fact that we need to basically look and disseminate between what is right and wrong with every single individual that's putting out content, including you should look at what Aaron and I are doing and go, you know what, Jason, I think that you're wrong. I think that you've got that wrong. Like, we have to be able to have that ability to question it. And I tell all my students all the time, question everything. And so this is a position where truly I think we need to ask our listenership that they question everything as well.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of 1 John 4. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. And then it goes on to say later on in the chapter that this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and is now in the world already. That part, the Antichrist spirit, is already in the world. That is a fact. It's coming from Scripture. And I think it's manifesting in this battleground over media because it's the media that's shaping a lot of our opinions. And so I think it's imperative to the church to test all the spirits and to, as Jason alluded to discern what is truth and what isn't. And just because it comes from a polished pastor at the pulpit or a woman in a business suit behind a fancy television screen doesn't make it necessarily true. And so I think that we're to be as gentle as doves, but as wise as serpents. And so I think it's imperative that we bring this to the forefront of the church, because there is going to be a lot of deception. It's our space that's been co-opted. It's our movement that has been infiltrated. I mean, if you want to discuss this in natural political terms, the Constitution and the founding fathers were wise enough to put it in our founding documents that we're to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. I mean, Judas was one of the 12. It's seen throughout Scripture. It's seen in our country's history. You know, we have the Benedict Arnolds in our media world. And just because they're on Rumble and they're, you know, waving an American flag and waving a Bible around doesn't make it so.
Yeah, I think that this is really a large, I don't even want to call it a testimony to what we're trying to do here with Full Armor Media. But those of you guys that have been listening to the show, you know that we are going to a video format. We'll still be on this channel. We'll still be at the same time. We'll still be producing radio shows. But we are doing a daily Insurgency where we talk about the issues of the day. So we're no longer just once a week. But we're also moving to video. And what we're trying to do is exactly what we're doing here, which is look at these issues that are affecting us internationally and locally, even hyper locally, and look and go, okay, how does this impact the church? What does the church's stance need to be? Like, what do we need to look at? And by and large, I think Aaron said it best as we were driving up here today. He said, you know, we need to get to a point where we're Jesus first, not America first. And I think that speaks so highly of what the church needs to be doing right now, is going Jesus first, Jesus first, Jesus first. Sure, America second.
Yeah, and I think there's...
But maybe not America second. Maybe your family second.
Yeah, well, it should always be God first, then your family, and then your nation.
Yeah.
And so, and I think we got a little upside down, especially in this, you know, because we're like traumatized with the shadow banning and the blatant censorship, where we had to latch on to Trump in 2016 saying, you're fake news. But that was such an exhilarating time for Americans. But now that we're 9 years outside of that, going on 10 years, we have to acknowledge that we're being attacked from the inside now. And it reminds me of Colossians chapter 4, verse 5 through 6, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. I think it's a prompting to share the truth and love for the glory of God, whereas we have a lot of people in conservative media sort of watering down the truth for the glory of themselves. And that is the line. That's what that's what I'm encouraging our listeners to do, is draw the line and put these ego-driven people who are waving American flags and Bibles and saying these people are not in tune with the Holy Spirit. They're pushing a idolatry of this country, for example, or they're pushing a worship of Donald Trump, or they're pushing values that are antithetical to what I value, like sending billions of dollars in foreign aid to a foreign country. That is not an America First policy. And so I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, I say it to my athletes all the time, right? 99% right is still 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's an element of that takes place where it's like, if you are voting right 99% of the time, but then you vote in contrast to God's command and God's law the one time, like, you are still 100% wrong. You can't be like, yeah, I voted that way that one time, but the other 99% of the time I was right on board. No.
Well, it reminds me of the times I would plead with my math teacher. Well, I was close. We're like, well, you're still wrong, though.
Well, now close is fine in math. Common Core does not care that you are 100% accurate.
I wish I could go back in time and do the Common Core math. That would have been awesome.
I would love to walk up to a cashier and be like, no, I did the math. It's $100, not $112. You need to charge me $100.
Yeah. We'll see how that flies.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna fly well. We're gonna take a brief time out. When we come back, we're gonna wrap up this episode with a conversation on where the economy is heading. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Full Armor Sports Teams has a new facility for after-school youth programs. It's located at 2380 Montebello near North Academy and Union with 2 pools for swim lessons and swim teams, a weight room for powerlifting, conditioning, and more. Full Armor Sports Teams is a Christ-centered and family-oriented organization bringing the youth of Colorado Springs together. For more info on after-school and homeschool programs, go to fullarmorsportsteams.com or call 719-629-SWIM.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo, my co-host Aaron Lujan.
How you doing?
All right. Join us at spiritualinsurgency.com. Sign up to get all the latest updates so that you don't miss a thing once we go live on April 1st. And you can get this content every single day. You can hear us talk. We're going to bring you the latest news. We're going to give you the truth.
Podcast every day.
At least we're going to try to give you the truth. We're not going to be 100% certain that we're right all the time.
Right.
But we try to be, and that's what's important. Everybody else just be like, I'm right all the time. No, you're not. I think it's really interesting what RFK is trying to do, because he's for a long time been like, you know what, we're going to remove pharmaceutical ads from television and radio. I think it's absolutely epic.
For sure.
The left is like, no, this is a First Amendment violation.
We want our drugs commercials.
Well, listen, like, you have prevented tobacco companies from advertising their product. You can't really advertise alcohol the same way you advertise everything else. Like, Why is it really a problem that we go, you know what, pharmaceutical companies? I mean, when you look at like the jab, right, the vaccine, how can you expect somebody like Fox News to run a piece on whether or not the vaccine is safe when they're receiving millions of dollars in advertising from these pharmaceutical companies? You think they're going to be like, you know what, we're going to come out against your vaccine because, you know, it's wrong. And they'll be like, but we spend millions of dollars every year advertising on your station.
You don't write up the boss. You don't bite the hand that feeds you.
All right. Well, we promise you one more segment. We're running low on time here. Aaron, take it away for us.
RT.com's reporting Moody's issues warning on U.S. finances. American fiscal strength is on course for continued multi-year decline, the rating agency has said. Ratings agency Moody's has sounded the alarm on the United States fiscal health, warning of a continued decline due to widening budget deficits and increasing concerns over debt affordability. I posted this on my Facebooks this week, and I asked the question. I got a quick question for the Red Hat crowd. What's the plan for the $36 trillion in national debt and the $1.7 trillion in annual deficits? And I didn't get any responses, probably because nobody follows my page. But
I think it's so hard because you're talking $36 trillion. You're talking about, here's the part that always boggles my mind. We're talking about loans that we've received from foreign adversaries and interest that's owed to foreign adversaries.
Why are we paying interest to our adversaries?
That's what I want to know.
Or borrowing money. That's
like the biggest question that I have is like, we owe how much to China? Like, why? Why not just be like, you know what? We're going to default on this. Like, try us.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Come say it to my face.
Not to mention that money is just this like fake, like the whole thing is just this fake idea of what value, you know, it's just absolutely absurd. But, you know, that we're like, yeah, we like, what difference does it freaking make? The whole thing, the Fed, it's all jacked up. At the end of the day, I think that Doge is making an impact, but I think that we're so far down this rabbit hole that to climb back up is gonna take like some act of just miraculous insight, or people just being willing to allow for the cuts to take place. Because right now, every step of the way is being fought. You know, down to the postal service, like, what does a stamp cost now? 80 cents. And people are like, well, you know, the Postal Service is losing billions of dollars a year, but we should be okay with it. Why? Like, you have more employees than you need. You're inefficient. and our cost of mailing items across the country keeps going up. You know, I walked into Lowe's the other day. There was 5 guys standing around talking, right? And I go, man, you guys better not let Doge in here. And they chuckled, but I don't think they actually understood the comment that I was making. But it was 5 people standing around at the store talking with each other, doing absolutely no work. And that's what's happening in all of these government agencies. It's like, whittle it down, get the job done. Yeah. It's the law of diminishing returns. You add one more employee, at some point you're going to end up with negative returns because too many people are talking around the water cooler.
Yeah, I think we're set up for the perfect storm. I think we're inside of a movie. If you look at the oligarchs, they rule at the critical points in history through crisis. You know, they had 9/11, they had the collapse of 2008, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, you allow the public to react, and you come forward with the solution, and you rule by manipulation. And I think that what we're experiencing with this decline in the economy, you know, this ratings agency, it's essentially saying the United States federal government has a really bad FICO score and we're not going to let them borrow any more money. The credit cards are maxed out. The income's not coming in. They're in debt. So that's a bad problem for us as Americans. And I think that's going to initiate a reaction from the public that the oligarchs, the technocrats, come save us, do something. And so we're conveniently having a conversation parallel to this of, oh, well, waiting in the wings is this gold-backed cryptocurrency, so much social credit score thing. So I just say be discerning. Just because, you know, the shiny shoe boys are sounding the alarm on the economy doesn't necessarily mean that the solution is going to be good for you and your family.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said earlier, find us online, spiritualinsurgency.com. Starting on April 1st, we will have daily Insurgency. You can find that on our Rumble channel. It is not set up yet. It should be set up probably about Sunday or Monday, where you can find this content every single day. We're going to have a very similar show talking about the issues that are at hand facing our nation and the world stage and how it relates back to the church, what we need to be wary of. I think that if you've listened to the show for a long time, you know what you're going to get. We would ask that you support us in this new endeavor. Go online, spiritualinsurgency.com. Sign up. Donate $10 a month if you can help us sustain this ministry. We would greatly appreciate it. But for now, have a blessed day, and thank you so much for joining us. And join us every Saturday right here at 10 a.m.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. For more information or to support the mission of Spiritual Insurgency, visit spiritualinsurgency.org. Join us next Saturday and every Saturday at 10 a.m.